be, jailed, fined, sometimes even killed for looking at a white woman, let alone touching her hand. But yet on the railroad, I would be fired or suspended for not looking at her in her eyes or not reaching out to help her up the steps.
We all know the mainstream media is going to lie and they're not going to talk about this. But you know better. That's why you're here. You're a real American. You know the truth. Whoa. That was weird. An interesting thing about being a former right-wing news consumer is you can easily identify a person who has been conditioned by right-wing thinking patterns. Anytime someone implies that I should be focusing on information they want to hear, it's a dead giveaway. In the comments, it's always some version of, why don't you talk about this thing that I care about? They're like Pavlov's dog showing up to an empty food bowl saying, where's my food? Conditioned to reject anything that isn't stroking their bias. I remember that sense of relief where I could just run back to Fox News where truth was based on comfort. It is very gratifying to be told that everything you believe is true, and that anyone who tells you otherwise is an enemy trying to take that comfort away. This is part of why I avoid watching MSNBC. It's like a small hit of weed, but I just don't like how similar it feels to being on a full-out binger with Hannity and Tucker in the Fox News crack house. It's fine to be entertained by editorial content, but the news shouldn't feel gratifying. It should feel uncomfortable because reality isn't comfortable. Truth isn't exclusive, or a conspiracy if it makes you uncomfortable. But there's a huge difference between sensationalism in mainstream media and the intentional disinformation coming out of right-wing media. I'm just going to be blunt. Right-wing media has stupefied their audience, and they take advantage of it for profit and political power. The Dominion lawsuit is just more evidence of how obvious this is. Even before this lawsuit, Tucker was on record saying it wasn't his fault if his audience was too stupid to know he was lying. The Dominion text messages very clearly show that Fox agreed with the rest of the mainstream media. But not only did they spread the big election lie anyways, but they also told their audiences not to trust those mainstream sources. Even though they agreed, those sources were telling the truth. Which really makes you wonder if they'll lie about the election systems, the courts, and the media to the point it inflames an insurrection and imperils democracy. It seems very likely that they also lied about the pandemic to protect their own interests as well. We already know that Fox News required their staff to wear masks and to get vaccinated. What are the chances that all those stories about vaccine science, Dr. Fauci, the CDC, and the medical community in general were all just lies to protect Trump? And Fox knew the whole time their lies were killing thousands of people in red states. It would certainly help explain the data showing a 3 to 5 times higher COVID death rate in Trump voting counties. The sad part is Republicans wouldn't even believe it if that came out. Because that thought is uncomfortable, and they'll retreat back to the idea that it can't be true because it makes them uncomfortable. It's like Pavlov's bell conditioning you to starve yourself to death from reality and the truth.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thanks for joining me here with Conversations with Taz. We'll get into it with Taz and Chris. Bum, bum, bum. I know we didn't talk about it last night, but yesterday there was a Los Angeles bishop that was murdered. We do have an update. I do know that I jumped into a few panels after yesterday's show, and I told y'all this story just seems a little weird to me, seems a little hinky, because anytime news media tries very, very hard to convince you somebody is a saint, that they're such a good person, there's always something that jumps out and you're like, I'm not saying that's the case, but they're trying to tell us that this bishop walked on water. But coming from CBSNews.com, suspect in death of Los Angeles bishop charged with murder. The man accused of murdering Los Angeles Auxiliary Bishop David O'Connor has been charged with murder, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon announced Wednesday. The suspect, 65-year-old Carlos Medina, is the husband of O'Connell's housekeeper and had done some work around the bishop's home, Gascon said. He faces one count of murder. Gascon said that the case warranted the filing of a special allegation that Medina used a firearm during the commission of the murder. Police have not announced a possible motive for the bishop's killing. Lieutenant Mike Modica of Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department said Wednesday that in an interview, Medina gave several different reasons for why he had killed the bishop, but none of them made any sense to investigators. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had heard some of what happened. It just, I mean, from everything I've heard from people that knew him, it was just, people were just shocked that anyone would be after him now. He had contact with the shooter, and he had just gone on some rant. Yeah, like they were saying, some rant before, but nobody knew necessarily the motive at the time of why he would have done something like that. But
see, my preliminary digging, this auxiliary bishop worked a lot with immigrant youth. Immigrant housekeeper. I'm getting that tingling in my spine. Something is making me very uncomfortable here. Something is making me very uncomfortable because we know, just like when John Wayne Gacy was pulled in, oh, he's such a nice guy. I would have never, I don't know why he's arrested. Ted Bundy's professors.
Yeah, he was
a great student. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because for a senior citizen, because Mr. Medina is 65 years old, the murder suspect, for a senior citizen to be like, you know what? I'm gonna spend my final years in jail. You did something.
Yeah, this very likely is one of those onions that you have to peel some of these layers to get to.
And I'm like, this is the husband of the housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop Gaston, come here. What were you doing? And they're like, he's giving several reasons, and I'm willing to put money down on when we found out the reasons why the cops are like, well, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's gonna make perfect sense. Mm-hmm. It's just not making sense to them because they're like, oh, he's a bishop. Were you boinking the woman? Were y'all having an affair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you really have to look at it, especially when you're looking at the age of an individual that commits this crime. The motive, obviously, isn't always immediately known unless there's a note or something obvious. But yeah, like you said, I'm sure that there's gonna be something that is found
Mhm.
with the story of how he is outside of the
Yeah.
church.
I'm not saying he is like Epstein, but let us not forget the early reports and the early investigations into Epstein didn't go anywhere because people in the neighborhood were like, "Oh no, he's so nice," and the police were like, "Well, I don't see any weight behind this. I couldn't imagine him doing this."
Yeah, with Epstein. Yeah, he's so nice to the cheerleading group at the school.
Mhm. But another person who everybody is now saying is nice. You know what? I'm gonna just play the clip for y'all, and before you ask, yes, this is a clip of Ann Coulter. I know. No, we're going to talk about this on the back end, okay? Just pay close attention to what little Annie Ann has to say. We'll see you in 2 and 2.
The reason people are concerned about the words they use, the reason Americans care about civil rights, the reason we are sensitive to racism is for one issue and one issue only, and that is how Black Americans were treated in this country. It is because of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. Those do not compare. Irish, the new groups, they always get a little bad treatment. Do not compare that to how Blacks are treated in this country. You don't get to piggyback on the Black experience in America. You do not get to do that just because you are a woman, an immigrant, gay, Hispanic. No, the rest of you can go F yourselves. No, this is for Black Americans. We seem to have forgotten them. It's not a rainbow coalition.
Various groups, feminist, gay rights groups, and those who are defending immigrants have commandeered the Black civil rights experience.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
There is the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow laws. We don't owe the homeless. We don't owe feminists. We don't owe women who are desirous of having abortion. That's what civil rights has become for much of the left.
Wait,
Can I just say, what have we done to the immigrants? We owe Black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country. The Black experience is different from any other experience in America. There is slavery. There is Jim Crow. So I really do resent it when people come along and say, well, you can't say the phrase illegal alien when you use the N-word. You can't say retard when you say the N-word. You can't say, I don't know, a million other things. They're always comparing it to the N-word. So the main point I want to make is no other word is like the N-word.
Ann Coulter for the win, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody saw that coming.
CNN, people are going to say, Ann Coulter, this is one of the first times I've ever agreed with Ann Coulter, and it's on CNN. Mark this down in your calendar. But Ann, you've always felt this way. This isn't new for you, right?
It's not only not new for me, this is standard Republican position. I mean, Justice Rehnquist,
And we're back.
Yeah, okay, hang on.
Now,
Now you
Annie
know
Ann.
how the ending was. This is standard Republican. I want you all to travel back in time with me. Steve Bannon said this. Lindsey Graham has tried to say this, where they're trying to convince Black people, brown people, and indigenous people of color that the GOP is not racist. So right now, as they're being taken over by Christian nationalists, they are on a full frontal offensive to appear different. They are marketing themselves no different than the United States markets itself to the globe. Because Ann Coulter could have spent decades not being a homophobic, transphobic, racist bigot of a woman. If she's always believed this, and this is always what she stood for when she was a staunch Republican until she decided to stand up against Trump. And that's why we didn't hear from her until now that the Christian evangelicals and nationalists are turning against Trump. Now she's making the rounds all over again. Now all of a sudden she's woke. And she's woke in opposition of the GOP's greatest prospect of getting into the White House right now, Ron DeSantis, that is anti-woke. So I'm not buying it.
No. And I don't think people should. Don't be fooled by somebody's tactics of, yeah, I've been in the shadows for a while, but here I am, and let me see if I can grab some of this either middle ground, or let me see if I can get a little bit different from a MTG, because that's kind of the voice. So anything less than MTG and some of that stuff is a little bit, it's just not for sale. You can't buy that. So yeah, I agree that people shouldn't forget where people came from.
Now, let me deal with this two-part question in the comment section. She's not weaponizing Black people against other minorities. Let me break down to you what she's saying. Ever since Black people were brought over to this country, everything that we fought for regarding civil rights has been co-opted, down to current movements like hashtag say her name, say his name, things like that. They're being co-opted by other movements. What she's saying is, hey, Black people have been inclusive with so much. Do not try to include yourself in the conversation with the N-word. That's what she's saying. She's saying what every other Black person has said. She's just putting a white female voice to it. That's all she's saying. She's just saying, hey, every other marginalized community, yes, you have these strides, but maybe not co-opt everything that Black people do. That's all she's saying. It's the same thing that we say. She's just a little more clunky in how she says it.
So you're saying we won't hear that out of Kellyanne Conway?
Lord Jesus, in Conway's mouth. That is, I believe Jesus is coming back.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Now, some of you may be old enough to remember the Iran-Contra affair with Ollie North. Some of you may not. But I've got a little bit of Ollie North then versus Ollie North now, and it's the prime example of GOP hypocrisy. Take a look.
Missiles to Iran during the Reagan administration. The guy on the right is a Fox Entertainment military analyst who thinks Iran shouldn't have missiles. They're the same guy. That's just so Republican.
So
recycle.
And when I saw that clip, I had to pull it for tonight's show because there's a lot of commentary going on as to why Biden went to the Ukraine and why he didn't go to Ohio immediately. And, oh, we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that. And I'm like, GOP, do y'all not forget how many of your cronies over the years have undercut the United States while serving in the United States government? You've sold arms to enemies. And also, can y'all use y'all brains and critical thinking for just a moment? Why would you want the commander-in-chief of the United States to go to a place that is a natural disaster, regardless of what Governor Mike DeWine says? Why? Why? Why are you not calling upon your governor to stop pussyfooting around and say, hey, there's a state of emergency, we need assistance, instead of just showing up pretending to drink tap water? Because if y'all saw that video clip and really think that Ohio politicians were guzzling tap water in East Palestine, Ohio, I got some swampland in my backyard to sell you.
Maybe Ron will show up in his white boots.
And just so you all know, tomorrow, Thursday, Pete Buttigieg will be in East Palestine, Ohio, because Mike DeWine has finally allowed federal aid to begin. And Donald Trump showed up today, went to a McDonald's, passed out red MAGA hats, and brought Trump water and passed it out to people. And they're like, they're marketing it as, oh, he passed out cases, and people were not given cases to go home.
It's like him throwing.
It's like, you get a bottle of water, you get a bottle of water, you get a bottle of water. And he told people that they were going to pray for him and that they wouldn't be forgotten. I don't know what these people who were chanting Trump 2024 thought. He's not the POTUS. He's not the president. He can't do anything for you but give you thoughts and prayers.
Isn't that like him throwing paper towel rolls?
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust that water. It's probably as clear as social.
And
true social.
And also, because I caught a little bit, there was a person on TikTok in East Palestine that showed Trump arriving. It took over an hour for him to arrive and then come out and speak to people because, they had to set up his rally-esque stuff. He had special signs for Ohio for them to call in and make donations.
Yeah, we know where that donation is going.
Like, don't y'all feel stupid? Like, you need help and you called the grifter in chief to come in. No, Urbane. You can play by yourself.
Yeah. But
Urbane, I said you can play by yourself.
You know Ohio better than I do. Yeah.
I swear far too much of the Midwest, far too much of this country votes against and goes along with things that are not for their better interest. Yeah. And if y'all want to know what Trump has been doing with his time, Urbane, you know how to play with your toy on your own, and that's what you can do. He's been whining on Truth Social. So let's start with. Now, I want you to know the gatewaypundit.com it's advertised as fake news. It's basically a blog of this guy with crazy conspiracy theories. So Trump retruthed this on Truth Social that George Soros has backed Ron DeSantis. Now, I had to do some digging. 2 seconds later, this is what I found. Soros, from the Associated Press, Soros did not endorse DeSantis in 2024 presidential race. Keep in mind, DeSantis still has not officially declared that he's running because he cannot, due to the rules in his state, until mid-spring.
That's right.
Claimed George Soros endorsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as the Republican nominee for the 2024 presidential election. Associated Press's assessment, false. During a keynote address ahead of last week's Munich Secretary Conference, Soros said he hopes for a scenario in which DeSantis runs for and wins the Republican nomination so that former President Donald Trump will run a third-party candidate, paving the way for a Democratic landslide. He did not express personal support for DeSantis as a political candidate. But Trump couldn't just stop there. Florida is doing great long before Ron DeSantis got there. People are fleeing from New York and to Florida and other places because of high taxes and out of control crime and because of a governor, thanks to President Trump, DeSanctimonious. Rick Scott did great, and even Charlie Chris had very good numbers. Sunshine and Ocean, very alert. First of all, the cost of living in Florida is astronomical. Nobody is leaving any place else to go to Florida. No one.
No one.
And crime is down. And I had a poli-sci professor in undergrad that was like, you want to know why crime is down in certain areas of Florida? Yeah, resorts. But STDs are high because Mima and Papa are getting it in.
Yeah.
Then he said, because remember, Ron DeSantis hosted 150 all-white, all-straight, pseudo-Christian white men in Staten Island yesterday. So Trump was going crazy. He said, so interesting to watch Fox News cover the small and unenthusiastic 139-person crowd in Staten Island for DeSantis, but stay as far away as possible from coverage of the thousands of people, many unable to get in at the Club 47 event. Now, Club 47, he renamed his Club 45 to Club 47 because he's just confident that some way, somehow, he's going to become president again. Now, keep in mind, it's a nightclub. It's more like a smokers club. You're not getting thousands of people in there. Okay. Think about a dive bar. That's the best that you're going to get. Urbane?
Yeah, but remember, he's always been about ratings. He's always been about competition. He's always been about, I want the biggest crowd. I want to, have the biggest turnout. Well, we know that has been the opposite most of the time, and he will still get on there and say, I had the biggest crowd ever. So who are we to take anything about him looking at crowd size legitimately? I mean, how can we take anything? I mean, he's sitting at home.
Donald John Trump Sr. is still vying for the approval of his father, who has long been deceased.
Mm-hmm.
That's truly what he's doing. He feels inadequate. And even though he inherited the business because his older brother decided to be a pilot and have a career on his own and had no interest in real estate and really was just over the abuse. And then when his brother Fred passed away, it was just, he was still living in Fred's shadows. And then he has, nieces and nephews that are successful in their own right. He has a first wife that was successful in her own right. He's never had success in his own right.
Right.
So he's still chasing that. And he is still, well, he ain't looking up. He looking down like, Daddy, please say you love me. It's not going to happen, baby.
Right.
If they come up out the grave, it's too late for all of us.
Yeah, Daddy will take back his fortune and be like, this is what you did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've seen his successful ventures. Yeah. Yeah, people say, oh, he's such a good businessman. Okay, show me.
And like I
he
said,
he wrote a book once. He had a book written once. And what did that do?
Exactly. Now, I told y'all Trump went to Ohio. You know what? Just take a look at this. Just
coming to the Commonwealth.
So Trump went to East Palestine today. Why? I don't know. I assume to throw paper towels at people, or maybe to tell them to rake their forests or something. Anyway, he was asked about the fact that his administration was the one who rolled back safety regulations. And then he did his best Shaggy impression.
You make of Biden, or rather Buttigieg's criticism of you pulling back rail regulations? Do you think it would have made
I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do.
Really? You had nothing to do with it? Then what are all of these receipts? 2018, he was still president. Transport safety rules rolled back under Trump. Something he bragged about. The Trump administration has terminated more unnecessary regulation in just 12 months than any other administration has terminated during their full term in office, no matter what the length. The good news is there's much more to come. 2018, Fortune magazine, Trump rolls back train braking rule meant to keep oil tankers from exploding near communities. I am continuing to get rid of costly and unnecessary regulations. Much work left to do, but effect will be great. Business and jobs will grow. The dude is such a bullshitter that just listening to him gives me pink eye.
Yeah. And he will deny things that we actually heard him say. Yeah. We've heard that for decades.
Yep.
And now we see what happens.
Yeah, he'll go from bragging about stuff to
somehow they'll spin it. They'll get old Tucker in there to spin it.
Whew, yeah, since the text messages surrounding
they can't put that one on Joe.
Yeah, the Dominion v. Fox News case. Text messages show that Tucker Carlson is deathly afraid of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't be afraid of somebody who still needs their diaper changed.
Yeah.
No.
Somehow Hunter Biden had something to do with the train, right? Okay.
Yeah, because that's all they want to argue about on the.
We're still on there. We always have that Hillary emails in our back pocket. We could always talk about that again. because there's not a whole lot else. We have a floodgate of stuff on Fox and everyone on the right, but yet let's go try and grab some. Can we get AOC's name out there? Can we talk about the squad? It's like, what? What do you have? What do you have? You have people that want to promote a change for the good of people. Wow, that's geez, they're doing too much. And then we got QAnon talking about Looney Bin. So yeah, you can really compare AOC and everybody to what's happening on the far right. We're right.
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, we're going to jump into the Black History Month ad, and then a little nugget on Black history, and then we're going to jump into some more Trump news, and then of course we've got some unhinged Marjorie Taylor news. Ooh. So we'll see how it 2 and 2. Go refill your drinks, y'all.
Black people stand up, feel good. Be proud of yourself as you should. And if you darker than the brown paper bag, wave your fists in the air, time to make these haters mad. They treat us like we came from the sewer, and everything we do, they try to outdo us. We made the traffic light, they write tickets. I ain't got to tell them, they already know where to stick it. We made the subway, they got scepter. Now everybody eating off of that except us. One thing we known for is our bravery, and Paul Kufi was an entrepreneur during slavery. You wonder why we like t-shirts that's white? Maybe because we used to pick cotton in another life. For Granville Woods and Maggie Lena Walker, put your lighters in the air now and spark up. One of the things that they never made clear, why Black History Month is shortest one of the year. Just one of the things that make me think.
They do the entire tour from the perspective of enslaved people.
The tour starts in a museum, then moves quickly to this church. The church was built by freed slaves after the Civil War. This is the cookhouse. These were former slave quarters. These were used for prison labor after slavery was abolished. These were ads for capturing runaway slaves, offering rewards. This is a large memorial for all of the lives lost on this plantation. It's important to remember that there have always been uprisings and rebellions against injustice. Sugar plantations were incredibly hard on enslaved people, living an average of 7 years on the plantation. This is why there are just so many names on these memorials. I believe this sculpture represents a slave ship. You can use your imagination for this sculpture. Then back to the church. I'd say overall the tour was quite moving, especially for the limited time available, but it wasn't nearly as accessible as I had hoped. We had a hard time with my mom's wheelchair.
Now, this plantation in New Orleans is one of the few plantations that gives an unsensationalized, unwhitewashed version of history on the plantation and doesn't make it seem like Black people were just skipping to Malou on the plantation. My only problem with her review, sweetheart, unless you were white and rich, disabled people were not chilling or even really living and thriving during the antebellum period. And if you think a plantation is going to be disability accessible, it's not. They would have to change the grounds to make that happen. I am not trying to sound ableist, but when it comes to visiting historical sites, sometimes we can't do it. I have physical ailments myself that there are days that I can't move around like everybody else. Guess what? I have to miss out on things. And we need to remember that. This is a plantation.
Yeah. Yes.
This is not a modern building. This is not, they uprooted everything and put it into a museum. No, they kept the grounds intact. Mm-hmm. And added a memorial for the unmarked, unnamed graves and for the people who were consumed. Because if we're going to tell history, we're going to tell history correctly. Some people consumed their slaves.
You don't hear that in Florida.
So yeah, it's not going to be super accessible. And once again, like I said, I'm not being ableist, I'm being real. It's no different than if you go visit the pyramids and the excavated sites in Egypt. It's not going to be accessible to everyone.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Urbane, you're killing me tonight. Sit down, baby. I love you, but Jesus.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. He needs to pay
Now, all right. Let's start with the grand jury and then just roll through the rest of this Trump stuff. Get comfortable, y'all. We're going to be here for a minute because we all know Trump is always up to something.
Hey, it's Ari from the news. I'm in a commercial break. We got breaking news that the Georgia criminal grand jury recommended over a dozen indictments in this Trump probe. Prosecutor Nick Ackerman, what do you think it means?
I think it means that Donald Trump is soon to be indicted. Not a resume builder for somebody who's running for president of the United States.
While the nation was fixated on the China spy balloon, I was way more concerned by a uniquely American windbag threatening America's national security. Former President Donald Trump promoted on his social media platform, Truth Social, which is neither truthful and is quite antisocial. Anyway, he retweeted, or retruthed as he called it, the following screed from a crazed supporter. Then they will have to figure out how to fight 80 million of us. It's not going to happen again. And of course, he's referring to losing on January 6th. The supporter goes on to say, people my age and old will physically fight for him this time. What we got to lose, certainly not a degree in English literature. Anyway, the supporter then wrote, I'll donate the rest of my time here on this planet to do it. And I know many, many others feel the same. They got my six, and we are locked and loaded. That Trump's action to forward the sick message wasn't the top news headline for weeks spotlights how far the civility bar has plummeted in the United States. We have become numb to the point where an ex-president who staged a failed coup against democracy and is currently running for president again unequivocally endorsed political gun violence. Our beleaguered society's muted reaction to Trump's retweet is far scarier than a China balloon to me. On February 6th, 2 American Nazis were arrested for planning to attack Baltimore's power grid. They hope to sow chaos in this majority black city. It's difficult to counter the domestic threat next door when key lawmakers, including former President Trump, are steeped in white supremacy and Christian nationalism. It's a vile philosophy, yet the Public Religion Research Institute found the Christian nationalist views were held by almost 1/3 of Americans, nearly 2/3 of white evangelical Protestants, 35% of all white people, and 54% of Republicans. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis is using a so-called war on the woke to purge school libraries of books, mostly by minority authors, who had the temerity of mentioning that they face discrimination in the United States of America. Imagine that. Some of our biggest national security threats are right here at home. They even come from elected officials who want to be president of the United States. While they hide their toxic agenda behind attacking the woke, the sane American majority better wake up and wake up now before it's too late. Homegrown American extremism is the real balloon that needs to be burst, and burst now.
Trump attorney Evan Corcoran has become the latest Trump attorney to have to hire their own attorneys due to ongoing legal problems. Specifically, Evan Corcoran, as we all know, is the individual who drafted the document signed by other Trump lawyer Christina Bobb, saying back in June or July of last summer, they had turned over every single classified document that Donald Trump had in his possession at Mar-a-Lago. End of story. You've got it all. Don't worry about it. And then, of course, the FBI had to go down there and they found all the boxes that Mr. Corcoran's letter seemed to have forgotten about. So now the DOJ is trying to tell a court that they need to invoke the crime fraud exception to attorney-client privilege so that they can get their hands on all of the communications between Evan Corcoran and Donald Trump. So Corcoran, since he is now involved in that legal battle, has had to hire his own attorneys, and he is now, in the last 6 years, the 8th Trump attorney to have to hire their own attorneys. He joins the likes of Michael Cohen, Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, John Eastman, Alina Habba, Lynn Wood, and of course, Christina Bobb. All of those lawyers at one point in their careers thought, you know what? It's going to look really good for me if I have on my resume that I successfully represented Donald Trump in whatever case it was. And it didn't end well for any of those lawyers that I just mentioned. Some of them still having ongoing legal problems. Others have been sanctioned by the courts. Some, of course, are in danger of losing their law licenses altogether. And now Mr. Corcoran joins their ranks. So the big question, of course, is why the DOJ wants to get their hands on those communications, why they want to invoke that crime fraud exception to get rid of attorney-client privilege. And I think the answer to that is fairly clear. What they're looking for is any kind of communication between Corcoran and Donald Trump, with Donald Trump telling them, you'd better tell the DOJ that you've turned everything over, even though we know we have these other things here. So basically, it would be a form of perjury, because this was a sworn document, which means lying on that document is no different than walking into a court and lying. So if Trump instructed Corcoran to lie, then not only do you bust Corcoran on it, but you can also bust Donald Trump on it. And that's the connection that they're trying to make. And it's a connection that would likely only exist on paper within the documents, the communications that Corcoran has between himself and Donald Trump. But again, 8 lawyers in 6 years have had to hire their own lawyers, all because they chose to work with or for Donald Trump. Now, I got to tell you, I have worked in a law firm for almost 20 years now. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of lawyers here. Not once in nearly 2 decades have I known of a single instance where any of these lawyers had to hire another lawyer. The only hiring of lawyers that goes on is when they bring on another associate. This is unprecedented for 8 different lawyers to have to hire their own lawyers to defend them just because they got involved with one guy. So if you are a lawyer out there, and we know that Trump recently brought in Tacopina, to kind of take over what his idiot lawyers had done, Mr. Tacopina, you may want to go ahead and go reserve a lawyer for yourself, because it hasn't ended well for anybody else. Anybody else. This is what he does. He takes somebody that may be a professional, that may at one point have been a normal person, and he drags them down to his level and then throws them under the bus at the first sign of trouble. That is not just a lesson, by the way, for Mr. Tacopina. It's a lesson out there for any lawyer considering taking on Donald Trump as a client. You will not get a happy ending. And based on what we've seen, you'll probably be lucky to even walk away with your law license when Trump is done with you.
I have to admit, I'm finding myself morbidly fascinated by the goings-on on Truth Social. This evening, Donald Trump was talking about Georgia and his perfect calls and how nothing was illegal. And he references a link from the Gateway Pundit. I don't know what the Gateway Pundit is, so I started doing some digging. What is the Gateway Pundit? So it turns out the Gateway Pundit is an American far-right fake news website. This is from Wikipedia, known for publishing falsehoods, hoaxes, and conspiracy theories. Now, I'm fascinated as to who is responsible for the Gateway Pundit. The Gateway Pundit is headed up by a chap who is now convinced that egg yolks cure COVID, and the reason there is an egg shortage in American egg farms is the pharmaceutical companies are engineering a shortage because egg yolks cure COVID. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not, I promise. And then moments later, after researching the Gateway Pundit's senior editor, I was banned from the Gateway Pundit. Promise I'm not making this up.
Well, it doesn't seem like Donald Trump is reacting very well to the news that he might be criminally indicted in the state of Georgia. He put out this insane statement still claiming that the election wasn't fair, saying this is the real crime that took place in Georgia with a racist and reverse DA. Like, what does that even mean? He went on to say that the DA does nothing but harass me for making 2 absolutely perfect phone calls. And as you could have guessed, they aren't harassing him, and those phone calls weren't perfect. I mean, he's clearly terrified coming up with these random excuses, but unfortunately for Donald, it seems that the walls are closing in on him.
They said it all. The one guy talking about the attorneys, getting attorneys walking away with maybe their license. They don't get paid either. I forgot about that part. So, who would? I mean, would you think you're making a name for yourself? That's not exactly a resume builder. I mean, that's a bad employment decision.
And my thing is, looking back over the litigious history of Donald Trump,
And you have.
I don't think he's ever won a case. I don't. And I know some people are like, well, did you forget about the former mistress that sued him? Technically, that was a win. And I was like, that was more of a draw. I don't think he actually ever. But
well, now he's won many in his mind. I'm sorry.
True. But one
and they're all on Truth Social.
That's true. And as much as Marjorie Green loves him and wants to be his running mate in 2024, she still hasn't made the trek over to Truth Social, but I guess. But from one loser to the next, this is coming from CBS58.com. Here's a name we haven't heard from in a while. Kyle Rittenhouse faces new lawsuit from man he shot in 2020 Kenosha violence. Kyle Rittenhouse, the Illinois man, because he's now over 18, who shot 3 people and killed 2 during violence in Kenosha in 2020, faces a new lawsuit. Gage Grosskreutz, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, one of the men shot by Rittenhouse, filed a lawsuit earlier this month in the U.S. District Court for the District of Eastern Wisconsin. In the lawsuit obtained by CBS 58, Gage names Rittenhouse, former Kenosha County Sheriff David Beth, and former Kenosha Police Chief Daniel Misc as defendants. Also listed as defendants are the city and the county of Kenosha, as well as other counties and municipalities who sent personnel to Kenosha during the violence, which followed protests after Ruskin Shesky, a white Kenosha police officer, shot Jacob Blake, a black man, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. Rittenhouse was acquitted of all charges in November 2021 for the shootings, which left Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum dead, along with wounding Gage. Gage must live with physical and emotional wounds inflicted by the defendant, Rittenhouse, and the defendants who deputized and enabled him, the lawsuit reads. Okay, keep in mind, Gage is the young man who basically, Kyle Rittenhouse blew his tattoo off. And see, this is what I need people to realize. Civil court and criminal court are 2 different things. Let me take you back in time to, here's a case everybody knows, O.J. Simpson trial. O.J. Simpson was acquitted criminally, but ended up losing his jacket, his whole wardrobe in the civil case. And the rules and regulations and how you prove if you owe someone in a civil case is not as stringent as a criminal case. And word on the street is that Kyle has left TikTok, but is still on Twitter, and he's trying to crowdsource over on Twitter. Now, we know he can't use GoFundMe because of the whole debacle with his last trial, and since he was acquitted, and he had to give back all that bond money and all that bail money, and I don't know how he paid those attorneys, because so he can't use GoFundMe anymore, child, but he out there crowdsourcing some kind of way. Now, this isn't the first time he's tried to crowdsource since he was acquitted, and the last time, I don't even think he raised $1,000. Then he came out with that 1992 graphics computer game, and that didn't sell too well either. So we're gonna see.
Yeah, and I am hoping that in the civil, because we saw what there was going into the criminal trial. Now we also saw the judge, who looked like he was treating little Rittenhouse like uncle. He was like his uncle. But yeah.
Oh, that judge was fangirling hard over him.
Yeah. We're like, what's going on here? Are they related? Yeah.
Pretty much. Now, before we jump into the crazy that is Marjorie Taylor Greene,
she's one of the crazy. We
must jump into yet another dosage of the crazy that is George Santos or Anthony, whatever his name is. Here we go.
You need to watch something. You need to watch something with me.
Lies about even your academic record. I'm just struck, not necessarily that a politician would lie, but that you would think no one would find out.
Well, I'll humor you this. I ran in 2020 for the same exact seat for Congress. And I got away with it then. And I guess...
Right. Well, that's honest. Stupid. So you thought, actually, they're not going to find out?
No, I didn't think so.
That's George Anthony Jingleheimer Smith just admitting on Piers Morgan that he lied in 2020. And he's like, oh, cool, I got away with it. Let's do it again and get more money. Like, legally. And he's still in office. Hi, I'm Jessica Anderson. I don't lie to get into office. If you'd like to my... Yeah.
So tell me again, people, how the good old GOP is the party of family values, honesty, Christianity, and yeah.
That's right. We heard that from Herschel. Yeah. Family values. Down in
and the fact that he got away with it, admitted that he got away with it in 2020, you're vetted by the party. The GOP can pull their head out of the sand and stop acting like they didn't know that he was fraudulent. You're vetted by the party. They're not surprised when things pop up against you.
No. But they need that slim majority. They want the numbers, and they're trying not to give in to even people on their side that are saying he shouldn't be there. Because we saw the Mitt Romney thing, and I know there's more like that feels he shouldn't be there. But they like that slim majority. And they've it shouldn't surprise a lot of us that they're willing to accept things that normal human beings in the workplace would not. If this was in the workplace and you had an employee who came through the interview process, turned in their resume, you hired them, you found out they falsified, guess what? They're no longer employed.
First of all,
falsifying an application.
Well, not only that, whoever hired them through HR that didn't properly vet them would be fired as well.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. And this is a person who now has security clearance.
Yeah,
he doesn't have top security, but he still has and we can't trust him. Like, first of all, his mama's client couldn't even trust him with a checkbook.
And they gave him a gavel. He's in a committee, right?
Well, he had to step down from his committee.
He stepped down. But originally, even when this stuff came out, they put him in a committee.
McCarthy still put him on there. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is the same man that the night of the State of the Union address, as a Republican, a pseudo-conservative Republican, it's given very Kirsten Sinema vibes. He's fangirling over Biden because that's what pissed Romney off. Like, why are you trying to get up close to the president? Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm like, Santa, what is your end game? Because he has no shame.
He wants to be on the first mission to Mars because Elon Musk. They're relatives.
Yeah, he can't work for Twitter because Elon is firing everybody at Twitter. Oh, and those of y'all that had a little jokey jokes want to keep DMing me talking about what I go work for Twitter with Elon. No, y'all just want to see me cuss Elon out. No.
Maybe it was part of the engineering team for the self-driving Teslas. I'm just saying, we see what happens with those cars.
Woo!
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into crazy Marjorie Taylor Greene, and after Marjorie Taylor Greene, we're gonna end it with some little sporting news. But let's get into her crazy tale. Like I said, get comfortable. If you need to go refill your drinks, do it, because we gotta. She's a hot mess. Here we go.
And we're back with an update to my update of Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for a national divorce. You know, the part where she's like, let's have the red states secede from the union. Only now we've been blessed with a full thread of her thoughts. I'm just trying to recover from a sinus infection. This woman won't stop. Okay, so this time she's just going all in. Let's get rid of the Department of Education. I mean, while we're here. Because we should just let the states control public education. Because historically, when we've allowed the states to control our education, it's gone really well. And according to Marge, China has been giving us money to indoctrinate our students. And as a former teacher making $35,000 a year, I'd really like to know, where did that money go? And good luck indoctrinating my students. Most of my high school students came to me not even knowing there were 50 states in the union. So I really feel like gender transition is the least of your worries, Marge.
This video is being made for educational purposes. Having said that, did y'all see what Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on Twitter recently? MTG took to Twitter on the 20th and was feeling spicy and tweeted this out. We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this. From the sick and disgusting woke culture issue shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies, we are done. She also tweeted this out. Happy President's Day to the GOAT President Donald J. Trump. We elected him in 2016, we re-elected him in 2020, and we will elect him for a third time in 2024. You will always have my support, Mr. President. Look at those two peas in a fucked up pod. The kiss assery is real. Now I'ma say this and it's gonna shock some of y'all, but I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene. We should absolutely separate the country from blue states and red states, mainly because I'm sick and tired of Florida, and Tennessee, and Texas, and the Dakotas, and the Carolinas, and Ohio, and Alabama, and... Okay, let's just say I'm sick and tired with like half of America. The point is, I'm all for it. Let's do it Hunger Games style. I never actually sat down to watch Hunger Games. I only saw bits and pieces of it until I essentially saw the whole movie, so I understand the gist of it. You have the 4 tribes and they all fight for resources, right? You have the Fire Nation, you have the Water... I'm having too much fun with this. Joking aside, I'm all for them going ahead and separating America. I genuinely wouldn't care. This would affect red states way more negatively than it would affect blue states. The wealthiest states in America are overwhelmingly blue states. And whether red states want to admit it or not, they rely on blue states. So go ahead, Marjorie. Leave America. Make your own damn place. I want to see how the minds of Florida, Texas, and Alabama combine. Hell, you know what? Y'all can have the name America. I don't care. Just keep your policies away from my state, and we will be fine.
Well, as a collateral descendant of Confederate General Robert E. Lee, it's clear to me that Robert E. Lee would have probably sided with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I know that's something she may celebrate, but to me, that's something that we cannot condone We must condemn in the strongest terms possible as a nation, as people of goodwill everywhere. For Marjorie Taylor Greene to side with my ancestors, the people who fought against this nation, is nothing short of treason. What complicates this too, that Marjorie Taylor Greene may or may not realize, is that this nation is the one signing her paycheck. Her constituents are the ones signing her paycheck. We are the one paying for her to say these hateful and harmful rhetoric against the very fabric of who we are as a country. In the same way that we paid for many of the insurrectionists in the Confederacy to continue to spew their violent and venomous rhetoric back then. This is kind of the same stuff, different day. Marjorie Taylor Greene is acting no better than the people that fought against this nation in the 1860s. When I think of Robert E. Lee and I think of Marjorie Taylor Greene, is I think they both have zeal. They both are passionate about what they believe in, but I think what they believe in is horribly misplaced. Lee fought for the continued enslavement of Black people in this country. Marjorie Taylor Greene is fighting for division and discord and all the things that we are fighting against as a nation. It is treason against this nation. It is insurrection against this nation. And with Marjorie Taylor Greene, we really shouldn't be surprised based on what we've seen in the past.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is one of those times where I'm going to sound snotty, but I don't care. Know your own familial heritage, especially if you're going to say that you are the descendant, the collateral descendant of someone so infamous and notorious within the country. Robert E. Lee was one of the Confederate generals who stated that no monuments should ever be erected in their memory and that the Confederate flag should be put away and never flown again. So no, he would not currently agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Lee's stance then and Greene's stance now are indistinguishable. They are the same. They are fighting against the rights of marginalized people, Black, brown, indigenous people of color. They fought against. Period. Full stop.
So she would. Yeah.
At least Colonel Sanders' nephew.
You can add up all her red states and they would have their Confederate flag back.
Mm-hmm.
So they make it different color, same thing, same design. Divide, that sounds a lot like history here in the U.S. and what's happened in the past. So division is treason. It's against everything that we stand for. So that's what she is. So it's like, okay, she wants history to repeat themselves, and that's pretty much the rhetoric that came ever since January 6th was everybody prepare, Civil War is coming. And
this is what boggles my mind. Now, I understand the whole Daughters of the Confederacy education. I know the descendants of the Confederacy, the sons and daughters of the Revolution, all of these different lineage organizations throughout the United States. I get that. And I know that they love revisionist history because they don't want to ever admit any type of defeat within the confines of the United States. But here's the thing. The South will rise again. If you grew up in the South, all you got to do is look to the left, look to the right, and realize y'all never recovered. You never recovered from the Civil War.
Yeah. Yeah, where's all the wealth in the southern states? Show me. There's not a whole lot. And to be Southerner, yeah, that's because you were born in a Southern hospital or wherever. Okay, that's where your parents or your mom or your dad, whoever was there at the time, you just happen to be born in a Southern state. That doesn't make you somehow. I'm forever a Southerner. Yeah, I'm forever where I was born too.
And what really gets me is half the people who are technically Southern don't even know that they're Southern. There are people in Kentucky that don't realize that they're technically Southern. There are people I'm like, y'all don't even know.
There are people that grew up in Kentucky and don't know it's a Commonwealth.
Oh, Jesus, Lord have mercy. That's why I get a tickle that this country is even considered the 50 states of the United States, because I'm like, okay, whatever, okay.
I said Virginia's a Commonwealth, Kentucky's a Commonwealth. We have Commonwealths. We have multiple Commonwealths.
I'm like, you got some states and a handful of Commonwealths. Like you, and then you took two countries and tried to say that they're states. And for those of y'all that are confused, Alaska was its own country. Hawaii was its own country. They took two countries and anywho.
Yeah.
But
and Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Now switching gears real quick, coming from Texans Daily.
Oh.
Another name I didn't see coming up in the I didn't see his name coming up in the news for this. I was sure his name was going to come up in the news for something else. But Texans ex-quarterback DeShaun Watson making NFL contract history. DeShaun Watson's contract is making NFL history in 2023. When the Houston Texans traded DeShaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns last spring, Watson signed a massive extension totaling 5 years and $230 million, every dollar of which was guaranteed. And due to the structure of the contract, Watson has now made NFL history with his cap hit expanding to $54.993 million in 2023, making it the largest cap hit in NFL history. The cap hit also totals 21.7% of the Browns' total salary cap budget and will remain the same every year through the 2026 season.
Wow. Good job,
And he
Cleveland.
couldn't keep his hands to himself.
Good job, Cleveland. For a guy that missed 2 seasons. And now because of this, you can't build around the guy because you're strapped. So you're actually going to have to let some good people go to clear room for this stuff. Yeah, that contract just, wow. It did a lot against what other teams are going to do when they have free agents.
Yeah, and this season, he better turn it around, because if he doesn't, he going to get shopped around.
I mean, there's people that are still going to get paid, but that guaranteed money, unheard of. Like, who does that? But then you say there's Cleveland. So, because we know there's some guys to get a bag, and we know one up in Cincy that's about to get paid big time, and they can't be cheap with that, or he walks. Not to say that Cincy is always throwing money around, but
no, the Brown family is pretty
but
cheap.
this time, it has to be done. It has to be done.
Yeah, and I think Mike Brown is old enough that he realizes he got one foot in the grave and he can't take it with him. I think he's getting that large shot clarity where she tried to hold on to all of her money like Scrooge. And then towards the end of, when it was getting close to the end of her racist ass life, she was like, oh, I guess I can't find a way to take it with. No, you can't.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know there's the old white guy in Dallas that is forever hopeful and overpays for guys left and right.
Because he need friends.
Yeah. Well, we know the little history that he's had, so we yeah.
Very true.
He definitely overpays and overhopes. He can worry about his little pretty stadium because that's all that's left. Because they're not getting trophies in there.
Nope. Now, from one professional athlete that can't control his hormones or his undercarriage to another who can't control his hormones or his undercarriage. This past weekend was All-Star Weekend, and a lot of people, myself included, were very verklempt at the fact that one NBA star was asked to judge the dunk contest. Not sure what I'm talking about? Y'all know I got the footage.
Here we go.
Attention.
Karl Malone is shaking, and they've been dragging him all-Star Weekend. So All-Star Weekend, the basketball game, was this weekend in Salt Lake City, Utah. All the stars were there, and Karl Malone was asked to judge a slam dunk contest, a very famous slam dunk contest. Well, a lot of people were not happy about this, and his tea was all over the floor. Let's talk about it. When Karl Malone was 20 years old in 1983, he was attending Louisiana Tech, where he impregnated a 13-year-old young lady. Now, this 13-year-old young lady was named Gloria Bell. Gloria Bell's family decided not to press charges and send him to jail for the statutory rape because he was 20 years old. They just decided to ask for child support, which he bickered them about. He did not want to give them $200 a month, and I think the judge appointed something in the hundreds, so he didn't have to pay that much, but they never sent him to jail because they didn't want to see that happen to the neighborhood boy. The young man, Demetrius Bell, was raised, and let me tell his story. So Demetrius Bell was an NFL player, and he actually spent 4 years with the Buffalo Bills and 1 year with the Philadelphia Eagles. He also is known as maybe the only player who only played for 3 years and got chosen to be put in a franchise. So he is a very special player. He made a name for himself despite not being raised by Karl Malone at all. Actually, he was kind of abandoned. Now, Karl Malone said in later years, in a report I read, said to the young man when he asked for a relationship with his father, it's too late, you're kind of already grown. But everybody needs their father no matter how old they get, I think. I have not seen anything bad about Demetrius Bell. He did play with the Dallas Cowboys for only 1 month, and then his NFL stint was ended. They said that his net worth, when I looked it up, was up to $5 million, and he lives a very comfortable life. And he seems to be handsome and doing well to this day. It's really sad that Karl Malone actually missed out on raising this superstar. I think that probably haunts him, and it's haunting him even deeper because that mama was a child when he was born. Now, when asked about the situation in Utah this weekend, he said he is not interested in talking about his past. He don't want to talk about it. Karl Malone's like, that's a part of my past. I'm human. Y'all don't know me. Y'all don't know what I've been through. And, I guess it's his right to do that. That is well past. But, people are looking at this with a stank eye. He was out this weekend with everybody having a good old time. That's LeBron and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I'm going to tell the full story. There are some kids he did raise. Demetrius Bell is not one of them. It's interesting to me that Demetrius Bell's his only child to go to the NFL. His son KJ played for LSU like his father, but he didn't make it to the NFL. That's T, huh?
And as always, I got one little correction. That young lady was 13 when she gave birth. She was 12 when little nasty pedophile was busting it down.
Well, when they call him the mailman, we know something that he wasn't there when it delivered.
But yeah, of course, Karl Malone is the one who want to talk about it. He does want to talk about the fact that he's a pedophile.
Right.
And I need you all to put on the lenses of the 80s. Because I know a lot of y'all look at kids these days and go, oh, they look so grown. First of all, don't no kid look that grown. And when you talk to somebody, you can tell the wavelength that they're on. But in the 80s, trust and believe, we looked our ages. Anybody that would be like, oh, you're so mature for your age. You don't look they were lying. They were lying. If we were to pull up pictures of us in the 80s, you would be like, oh yeah, they're this age. Like, there's no getting around it.
Right. Yes. I agree with that. So, yeah. Conveniently, he ended up being able to raise other kids. He even reached out to him. The son even reached out and was shunned.
Let's not forget, the judge ordered him to pay $125 a month.
Yeah.
Even when he made it into the NBA, he wouldn't even do that.
Yeah, we know what they make. So, yeah. The fact that his son even approached him.
For those of y'all that may not be in sports, or you may feel like he was before your time, Karl Malone was not a slouch. He was not a bench warmer.
No.
This was not a call up from the D League.
This was somebody who helped make Utah successful for many years. People know him in Stockton. It was the Malone-Stockton years in Utah. and they were successful. Did they win titles? No, but they were successful. They were deep in the playoffs. They were doing all that. So this guy was not hurting in his career. For the time, he was probably getting in the upper levels of contracts. He was a franchise player. They don't make peanuts. So yeah, I don't think I would have even searched for him. I mean, he's a bigger guy than I. But I mean,
And what makes it even more sad,
like Herschel's kids.
yeah, what makes it even more sad, this young lady was a minor. So she's banking on her parents to make the best decision for her. They decided, okay, just support this child. We don't want to send you to jail. And the fact that the son still wanted a relationship means that his mother never said a bad word about him, which means she never healed from this trauma. Nobody explained to her that she was a victim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. We hear about this from, R. Kelly and others, but this was Karl Malone. This was an NBA star. I mean, R. Kelly had his own thing going, but this was an NBA star, and we know a lot about womanizing and other things going on, but throughout the pro leagues, because we used to always speak about the one in Pittsburgh, but yeah, I mean, it's clearly at that age. I mean, you're talking a child. You're talking an era where they weren't all walking around with crop tops and skinny jeans and stuff. I mean, you like you said, people look their age. You could easily, without even probably listening to them speak, you could tell. That was very much the era. So,
Dude, I still have it cemented in my psyche.
Now you get a lot more. Tattoos are a lot more common. Piercings a lot more.
Yeah, but see, I was around that age. It was me, and it was like 6 of us total. We got to walk to this local store because it was 6 of us. And I was so excited because it was the first time we didn't have to take an adult with us. And there was a woman who yelled after me. And it took me a minute to realize she was yelling after me. And I kind of came to a full stop thinking it was like a friend of my mother's or my granny's.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, you look about the age of my son." And I kind of froze like, "Ma'am, I don't know your son." She was trying to hook me up with her son. But she was like across the road and could see me about to walk into the store and knew how old I was without talking to me, without anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, we went through the eras of, we went from back in the 80s where, the pants cuffs were rolled up. We went through the era where baggy jeans were worn by everybody, male and female. We went through, the bell bottoms. We went back to a lot of, some retro eras. I mean, we've been through a lot of stuff, but that's come in a different era today where it does take someone to open their mouth sometimes for you to realize, wow, that's a very young voice. Because people really want to be grown. People look a certain way, and it's not just female, guys too, and so for Karl Malone back in those days, though,
yeah, I was just nasty.
Things would have been obvious.
Yeah, and there was a young lady that started a conversation on social media, and she was so right. Teenagers and preteens nowadays, they don't have what we had. We used to have our own stores where we had quote unquote age appropriate versions of different fashions, like whatever they don't have their own stores anymore. They have to go into exactly where we get our clothes, and then they just got to figure out their size and take it. Where we had our own stores where we could go in, and if we wanted those baggy jeans, we had baggy jeans because we might have like a little color pattern on ours that the adults wouldn't have, or they don't have.
You might have urban stores, urban trend stores compared to department stores. depending on what brands you wore, depended on what store you went to. But yeah, I mean, each generation, each era had its own styling. I mean, you could go all the way back to, and I know we've talked about this before, the singer from Memphis, who, you know, we're talking back when, you know, young girls still had, you know, bows in their hair, or, you know, little little sundresses or something. You know, it's you still know who that person is because of how they carry themselves. Whereas I get it if you're thinking only of today's culture, it's blended with a lot of, you know, age interaction. But yeah, back for a long time, you could easily, based on where you shopped, what you wore, it was easy to identify people, and so you knew if you were with somebody young. I mean, you knew it. I mean, if you were getting with somebody back then that age, you knew you were getting that age. You know, it wasn't like I'm fooled. They had a fake ID. No, you knew you're getting that age. There was no hiding it.
Because even with the fake ID, because I remember when it's so embarrassing, but it's funny. When I turned 21, I was so proud to turn 21.
Yes.
Nobody believed that I was 21. They thought my license was fake. Like if my mother or like a parent was not with me to verify, I legitimately had to have my passport, my license, and my birth certificate with me at all times to show people like it's me. And because my mother and I look so much alike, stores around our house at that time, they swore up and down I had my mother's license. And I'm like, you think my mother is 21? Like, no, it's me. Like, so even a fake
you didn't have the ink and piercings, people. Everyone needs to realize you have the
there were people that until I turned 40 that came to me and was like, oh, I always wanted to date you, but they thought that I was much younger than what I was, so they avoided me.
Yeah.
Which I understand and I respect. Kudos to them. I wasn't gonna date them anyway. And if y'all watching, my bad, I wasn't gonna date y'all anyway. But thanks for being respectable people. But yeah, they did tell me like, oh, we thought that you were. Yeah, I'm like, no, like they thought that I was like my younger brother's ages, and I was like, no. But final thoughts on the night?
Yeah, I want to take a little detour from where the night's gone just to add this in. I know we haven't really brought this up or talked about it much, but this one has to do with, since we kind of finished within the sports area, I'm going to talk a second about my team and our latest hiring. Not going to say too much because we don't have clips and all that, but for all that know, my team is Washington, the Commanders, and we just hired Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs. We can talk about how much of a lateral move this was for him and how much that, you know, over the years he had been interviewed and just never got that head coach job. I know this was a lateral / upgrade because of his title and what he's going to actually mean on that team, because if anyone knows Ron Rivera, he's a defensive-minded coach. So he is not an equal like Andy Reid was, where he was an offensive mind with an offensive coordinator. So he is an assistant coach, and he will be an assistant coach, head coach in Washington. A lot of people criticize the fact that, number one, there's got to be something wrong with him because he's had a lot of interviews. So no one's hired him so far. So it's kind of like somebody who's gone on a lot of job interviews, and even though the resume looks real nice, there's got to be something wrong because you had never been hired, so I'm not going to take a chance on you. And the other thing is, they say, well, he wasn't the real play caller because Andy Reid's an offensive-minded head coach. I just want people to give this man a chance and let him do his thing. We know that Ron Rivera, the head coach, is defensive minded. Let this man come in, show you what he's going to do. It is a short-term deal. I think it's just a 2-year deal right as of now, because his ultimate goal, as it should be, would be head coach. And yes, depending on my team, we never know what's going to happen with Ron Rivera. But this is a good minority mix, number one. You know, and it's good to have the two minds working together. We have heard a lot of good things from some former players about Eric Bieniemy and the mind that he has. It's just that he was under another offensive mind, and maybe he didn't call the plays, call the shots. But there's a lot of head coaches in this league that didn't either, and they got shots at head coach. So I just want people to give this man a chance. Yes, he has some good players, and yeah, there's still a decision about the quarterback and all that good stuff. And yes, we are forever waiting on that new owner, which please come sooner than later, because we need to keep that going in the positive direction and get out of the shadows of the cloudy Snyder eras that we never wanted from day one. But yeah, my thought is just tonight, just to promote that this man got a job, and I think he's a quality candidate, regardless how people are shooting him down. And I'm sure we'll have more clips in the future about people talking about it. But I am proud they made that move, and I'm happy for Eric Bieniemy, because he has gotten to the point now where he's on a team that is going to open up the offense in his hands and let him run with it. So we will find out. But I think he is a quality guy.
Oh yeah. I think y'all could give us a run for our money next year.
Not quite there yet. We haven't had an established quarterback, so there's still that to figure out. But around the quarterback, we got great receivers. We know we got the two Buckeye receivers, Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin. They were roommates at Ohio State, and they're the receivers, which is good, plus a decent tight end, decent running back. Well, everybody knows a running back. He was shot. He came back from being shot. So we have and he played well. I mean, that was an amazing story in itself. If we didn't have such a controversial owner, that may have been a better story, because of him bouncing back quickly. I mean, it's miraculous how quick he came back from being shot multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunate it wasn't in certain areas of the muscle or ligaments that he was able to get back out there, and he played well. He basically took over the starting role. So I like the dynamics of where we're going. I know I'm not like somebody from Dallas that's always forever talking about this is our year. I'm a realist. I know that we have certain key positions that need to be solidified in order to do that. But I like the direction that we should be and could be going with new ownership, Eric Bieniemy aboard, and potentially fine-tuning a quarterback. So not quite ready to give the Bengals any runs, but then again, you're in the AFC. So
I know.
Which, like I said, when it comes to the Bengals, I'm a big fan of Joe and Chase and everybody. I even like the coach, old motivated Zach. Oh, go get him, Zach. But they need to pay the people. They really got to pay people.
Yes.
Otherwise, I fear that if you start franchise tagging certain players, that's just a sign that you're just not willing to give me a long-term deal. And that's when you start leaving. So
yeah, Mike Brown has to loosen the purse strings. Like,
it's not just Joe. You got Chase. He's going to need some of that.
Yeah, don't make any.
They may lose T.
But
they may lose T though.
Yeah, but come on, Mikey Mike. Don't make no stupid Cleveland Brown moves, okay? But make some good moves, okay?
No team wants to make that move.
Mike Brown, y'all left Cleveland for a reason, okay?
Yes. So that's my thoughts. Long thoughts. That's my long thought for the night.
But as always, we've had a great night. Of course, I got one more nugget for y'all, and I will see y'all tomorrow. And as always, each one teach one, each one reach one. Welcome back to Black History Month Facts you might not know about Broadway. George C. Wolfe is the most nominated African-American theater artist of all time. He was nominated for 23 different Tonys, 5 of which he actually won.